Either I have a premature engine oil leak or I have a blown shock. Hey guys, welcome back to the channel. It's been a while since I've done anything with the truck. And I don't try to make these things happen, but maintenance is maintenance. And I've got some Aluma 2.5, which is basically the Elka suspension from Toy Tech in my Tundra. I've had it there for 3-4 years, but I don't drive a ton, about 30,000 miles on it. Probably 3,000 of that's off-road. And I thought about having them rebuild it, but it was like $800 just to rebuild the front two shocks, and I'd be out of a truck for like 3 days, which doesn't work for me. So instead of doing that every 30,000, I went ahead and did a little upgrade. So stick around, you'll see what I got. So this arrived in the mail yesterday. These are Bilstein 8112s and beautiful 8100s for the rear. And the rears have the adjustable external dampening, external bypass dampening. These have the automatic 3-zone internal dampening. And I gotta say, initial impressions, very impressed with the build quality. They're very beefy. The reservoirs are massive. And this new black powder coat finish is beautiful and seems like it's gonna hold up really well. And just a quick shout out, I wanted to thank Colton over at Hot Shot Off-Road. He made this happen. I'm not sponsored, I didn't get any discounts. He just had a really good regular price on these, and nobody seems to have them in stock for the Tundras, but he was able to manage to pull them together through a variety of sources and get them out to me in about a week, which was extremely impressive. And I'm very grateful to get these on as the oil has continued to leak in that Tundra, and now I feel like I'm riding around in a tractor on city streets. So check out Hot Shot Off-Road. Great customer service, and this is in a time where I've checked with I think 3 other shops that couldn't get them for me, and some of those shops wouldn't even return phone calls. So Hot Shot Off-Road, check them out. It looks like each set of shocks comes with instructions, which is great. They both come with instructions and all the parts and hardware to bolt on the reservoirs, which was kind of a up in the air question for me. They also have spanner wrenches in each box, so if you manage to dent one or bend one, you've got 2 sets, one for each side of the fronts. And it looks like it's going to be a pretty straightforward bolt-on application. I'll go ahead and narrate as I go so that you guys can do the same things. I believe these are preset to the desired position, which gives you about 2 inches of travel, I think, which is probably where I want to be, but I have more weight than a stock Tundra, so I'm probably gonna crank these up just a little bit before I even get them on. It's easier to do that when they're off. So before getting too crazy, I'm measuring my current height because things change over time. With the Elkas, I'm at 41 inches. You can see it's actually a little less than that, but there is a space between this fender flare and the actual fender. So 41 inches in the front, and we'll say 42.5 in the rear. So I have a 1.5 inch rake on this right now. Going over the instructions here, on second thought, you're supposed to be in that ride height that they recommend with these shocks for the automatic damping to work. So I do think I'm gonna account for probably a 1/2 inch of lift height drop from that bumper, and I'm gonna go ahead and crank these down about a 1/2 inch on either side. So the purpose of this video is to be informative, and I hope you learn from me. Don't bother adjusting these until they're at least bolted in up here on the truck. Now that you've got those loosened, go ahead and lift up one side of the truck and get that wheel off. Well, that explains why I felt like a tractor ride. I'm lucky that didn't fall apart on me. You can see the angle on that. Something internal fell apart on here while city driving. It's not like I was topping it out. Crazy. That's why you gotta take your suspension seriously. Anyway, all I need to do is pull that out and pull the nuts off the top hat, and that should come right out. We should be able to get that new one in there. Okay, and I recommend putting either a small jack under your lower control arm or using some sort of strap to tie it up to make sure that everything doesn't fall down and then make it harder to get things back in as you're taking that bolt out. So we got the nut off of there. Had to have the other side held with another wrench. And I expect there's gonna be some preload. I don't know if it's gonna go up or down. We'll adjust the jack as necessary after this pops out. Just make sure your hands are clear so you don't cut your, like, smash the crap out of your finger with that thing when it drops. And we're still working it. It must be a decent amount of preload. Let me see if I can loosen this, move this jack around a little first. Pause it. All right, so taking the castle nut off here, of course there was a cotter pin holding it in place. It was not as tight as I would hope it would have been, probably because this banging around caused some extra play in here. There's already space there, and that's because I used my mallet to get it up. And so if you think you need a puller, I would say if your suspension is old and rusty, you probably do, but I just did the ball joints a couple months ago, and I greased that, so it's coming out pretty easily. I'm gonna knock that out so that we have independent pieces. Should help get this out a little bit as well. So let's just knock that up out of the way. And you know what? I'm also gonna get a tie to hold on to this, just kind of keep them together so that we don't have the brake line getting over tensioned. All right, well, we got it punched through, and now you can see this is binding. And sure enough, yeah, we have no limits on this shock. You can see that piston's about to fall out. So even though I have some protection here for my brake line, I had it maxed out as far as it could go without damaging it. I undid the bolt here, and we're just gonna have to bend that line. Otherwise, I'm gonna have to disassemble this whole unit. And I think I can just get in there and let that steel line bend a little bit. Since we're not bending it all the time, it should hold up. Slowly lower the jack and see if we can get that to unseize there. Here we go. It's moving. My limit strap that was preventing me from going any higher, so I'm gonna loosen that a little bit. Well, it's starting to come. You can see the pistons coming out there. Okay. All right, so these got loosened up enough that I'm just using a quarter drive to do this. Is a lot faster than continuing to bang it, which it's already getting loose, so that's a good sign. I think we should be able to get this out without having to cut the spring, fortunately. Okay, so I don't need to lift up much. You can see it's just the weight of the shock practically. Let's try to get this out. And then, yeah, I gotta get underneath this Clemby. Okay, actually, just had to get the freaking pry bar off of there. There's half of it. Or should I say a third? Ah, boy. Friends, don't be like me. Service your suspension when it's supposed to be serviced. I was only like 2,000 past the service interval. Just another note on the height settings. You can see they tell you basically there's about a 3/4 inch difference of lift with the same setting on a 4-wheel drive versus 2-wheel drive. So I did the math. And the 2-wheel drive weighs about 300 pounds more, or the 4-wheel drive weighs about 300 to 600 pounds more than the 2-wheel drive. So that leads me to believe that if I essentially go an extra, what is that, 3/8 of an inch-ish, more threads, that should bump the truck up 3/4 of an inch because I have an extra roughly 600 pounds daily driving weight on there. And that'll probably give me the lift that I need. We're gonna give this a try without my helper. Bilstein facing out. Yeah, the stupid roller carts moving around. It's like shopping at TJ's and their stupid 4-way wheels. Well, I got it in. It's a lot more challenging than expected. You could alternatively take off your tie rods, etc. We got it in. 2 adult men would probably help. I lost my helper, he needs a break. And tape up your reservoir before you do any of this. It's gonna bang around and that'll protect it. Unfortunately, I scratched mine. So take my advice, tape that before you start. And once you get it set up there, have someone just finger tighten one of those top hat screws or nuts, and that'll give you a little working space. And get your jack down here and work on aligning that into the bottom there, into your lower control arm until the hole aligns, and then you just gotta tap that bolt through, and then we'll get that reservoir on. All right, You missed a lot of fun. I used a spanner or a spring compression to get this tightened, and I couldn't even get it tightened all the way to actually create space, unfortunately. And so there was still tension at the bottom down here. So I sprayed that with WD-40 because it was pretty tight, and I ended up doing this to these wrenches, So the reservoirs are gonna go right here. You're gonna wanna pull that flap out of the way, and then use a step bit in your drill and drill these out to be just big enough to fit the included rivet nuts that came with the set. If you don't have a rivet nut tool, I'll put a link in the Amazon description. I'm also gonna put those spanner wrench. I ordered a hardened carbon steel set. They're only like 30 bucks. You're gonna want that before you start this. So you just take these and you squeeze these handles together, and that's gonna put that rivet in place. Okay, you're gonna use the original body clips to pin that to the bottom of the reservoir bracket, and then you can see the holes aligned there. We're gonna go ahead and screw that in. Actually, I'll get the reservoir in first, and then we'll screw that in. Just a little more flexibility. All right, just test fitting it. You can see there's very little clearance in the corner there. So you wanna make sure that this is pretty much centered over the bracket. I'm just test fitting it. I'm gonna go ahead and tighten it down up there, and then I'll put it back in and tighten these in. All right, there we go. Aside from me scratching up that reservoir while putting it in, it looks pretty good. And go ahead and get this wheel put back on. Everything's back to torque. And go ahead and hit the other side. Actually, we're probably gonna do the rears. All right, hoping to making up for lost ground here. These rear struts should only be 2 bolts. And these aren't broken, so that should be quick. So you need to hold the strut still while you undo this 19 mil up top. And this is a pretty wide, so unless you have a large wrench, I like to use these. This is made by Nipex, and you can set your dimension. It's kind of like a channel lock, except for it holds more like an actual wrench, and it has incredible leverage on that joint. I mean, you're not having any slippage going on there. I almost forgot to mention, you need to make sure you have a jack support under this rear side of your solid axle, because as you drop this strut, that's what's holding this whole assembly up, and you want that to be supported so that it just wanted to compare these side by side. Got them lined up. I'd say that's even. And the Bilsteins run, looks like about 1 inch longer. A little extra travel, downward travel, that's nice. And then got that taped up before putting it in this time. All right, this is going a lot easier than the other side. I put the jack under there so I have adjustment. And I put the pin in place to hold the strut down there. And then going up top, there's an order, and it comes with directions on how to do that. So I don't know if I mentioned, but the jack under here gives you control to lift this up and down in order to pull this out. Last time I dropped it and it just fell onto that jack stand, which is a little violent, probably not safe. So get it on there, get some pressure up on the bottom of your axle, and that makes this, when I took that nut off, no big deal. Now I can just drop that slowly, and that should come out just enough to get this out. All right, so I pulled the bolt, got the nut off the top and the bolt out of the bottom, and it's that simple. Okay, according to the instructions, you want to drop the truck so there's weight on here before you tighten this nut. And the spec on that, I believe with Toyota, is 66 pound-feet. The top one is 20. I'll put a screenshot of the torque specs for the rear and the front components that you'll be working with after this scene. All right, I'm gonna do this side a little differently than the last side that I did on the vehicle. I think I can, now that I've ground these down, guys, don't do what I did. Again, don't go to the local auto parts store and rent a pair of spanners, or I guess spring compressors, because you're gonna buy them. And now I owe them I paid 55 bucks as a deposit, and they're mine now. Instead, this is where they came in. I'm gonna put a link in the description on Amazon for a pair of those for 26 bucks. You do need to grind these down to make them fit in here. And the way that you're gonna get these on is the way I'm showing you, up and out. And then the bottom half does not need to be ground, because because there's nothing to clear in there, but it does need to be taken off. And you don't have room for the pins. The coils are thicker than the pins will allow, so you don't need them. But that's gonna go in there like that. And I'll thread it around to get it as low as I can, one on each side. Get those compressed. And then I'll put that spanner wrench I bought on Amazon on there to get these taken care of without having that happen to you. And last but not least, tape. Put a couple layers of tape on the back of this because it's, even though it fits in there, it's gonna still touch the strut. And you could grind it for days, and I think you're still gonna have that issue. I'm actually gonna put some tape on the inside here so I don't scratch my coil as well. I'll be dang, you guys. This side, because I'm not putting as much preload on it, I was able to get this to move. Look at this is gonna move freely now. Well, I can't do it with one hand, but you get the idea. I'm actually gonna just adjust this by hand without the wrench. Only thing I need to use the wrench for tomorrow is to lock that. So, good news. Left side is, you don't need to worry about the friction in there, or breaking spanner wrenches for that matter. There we go, 5/8 of an inch. That's my spec up there. Very nice. I'm gonna wrap this up tonight, and then all I have to do tomorrow is tighten that bad boy. All right, I decided to wait till today to do this last one. It was late. So just gonna pull that off and these guys off, and I have the truck supported and this. And now this should be a lot easier. If you want to see what it looks like to do this without having a blown shock, this should be pretty easy. Stay tuned. All right, so this shock is in good shape. I tried dropping the lower control arm as much as it goes, and I will have to remove this tie rod. So I'm gonna pull the pin, drop the castle nut. Probably just gonna be able to pop that off with a hammer again because I just recently did it. All right, you're gonna need to remove this. I believe this is this wheel speed sensor. This was starting to get a little snug, and I'm just gonna drop it a little bit more by lowering the jack, see if it gets enough without having to pull brake line or other items from the assembly. All right, I pulled the brake line. There's enough tension in the bushing here that this lower control arm isn't gonna drop crazily too much to where it's gonna cause problems here. In fact, I had to push it down a little bit to get it to drop enough to pop this joint right there. But you can see I have it out, and now I push the upper control arm out of the way, and this just comes out real easy. I'm gonna go ahead and lift that out when I get it off camera and drop the other one in. Real quick, wanted to do a side-by-side comparison so you guys can see the difference. First of all, these Elkas are a lot lighter. I'm tempted to say almost half the weight of these Bilsteins. And they're slightly longer by, I don't know, a ½ inch or so. But what I found interesting is measuring from basically where the piston meets the stop down there, we're only, just over 5 inches, maybe 5.5. If I come over to these Bilsteins, you can see in the window there, we're at 6, let me see, there. 6.5 inches. So the Bilsteins should provide better articulation based on that. I know they have built-in bump stops, so that might be part of what's in that travel, but that last inch of travel is really just to save you from smashing things anyway. So anyway, I was concerned about travel. I don't think that's an issue. Okay, there's a large Heim spacer there, and then also make sure when you cut this cable tie, these don't fall out. The large Heim spacer goes up against, let me see, you can see the picture. That's gonna be on this side. And that's the same on both sides, so that no spacer towards the LCA, the big spacer goes away from the LCA. And this Bilstein logo and the reservoir hose comes straight off the side facing the camera here. Okay, I got one of those screwed down just to hold this in place, and I'd say the hardest part is getting that left back bushing, because it's kind of soft, seated between the bottom of the coilover and the lower control arm. So a little tip, what I did is I used this painter's putty blade and just kind of pushed it in there, but also using the jack to sort of raise and lower this to where you need it, and rotating your hub assembly so that this tie rod isn't blocking you from getting that shock where it wants to go. Okay, just like the other side, I got those rivet nuts installed there. And I'm gonna go ahead and screw this in, use some Loctite on those bolts, and then get our reservoir installed. All right, the location of this reservoir is very hard on the passenger side to get to the bolt that's tightening that reservoir clamp. So I pulled this fairing out of the way, and I'm actually gonna undo these pieces and pull this out and what I'm gonna try to do is hold the reservoir in the same orientation here so the hose is in the right spot, and then tighten it up and then put it back. Okay, there it is, fully assembled. Got everything torqued up to spec. I showed you that screenshot earlier with the torque specs. Make sure to save that. I'm gonna throw the tire on, and I'm gonna, when I get the alignment done, I'm gonna have all these torques checked again. If I have them do it, or I'll do it myself, I'm not sure. But after driving around, you're gonna wanna re-torque everything, make sure everything is still good. And man, let me tell you, Colton over at Hot Shot, you might have saved my life, buddy, getting these out to me on time before I kept driving like an idiot on that, blown shock. It was just, never thought it could be that bad. So thank you. And I'm gonna do a little test here. You guys can see what it looks like at least. Okay guys, just got it back from the alignment, and talk about a fiasco. Be careful where you get your tires aligned. Holy crap, guys. $1,200 later for an alignment, because the first place I went to that I've been going to for years must have had some rookie mechanics down there. They turned the tie rods the wrong way and thought that they had more room to work with. They kept trying to tie them the wrong way, heated them with a torch, melted my boot on one of the tie rods, and fused the threads after stripping them and overheating them, and then called me up and said, hey, you need to pick up your truck, we can't figure this out. So I drove it to a reputable shop 10 miles away, burned through 1/8 of an inch of rubber on one of my expensive tires, and they had it fixed for me $1,200 later after replacing the tie rods, a boot, a broken cam bolt, and the cost of the alignment. But glad to have the truck finally, and I found a reputable shop that's pretty pricey but does the job when needed. And yeah, so I just measured it. I ended up with 2 3/4 inches of height in the front, 2.5 in the back. I like it. Has a little bit of rake, so when I bring heavy things on it, when I haul, it's gonna be level. And now we're gonna go ahead and try it out on some speed bumps at different speeds. Stick around, let's see how these bad boys perform. All right, so we've had the Bilstein 8112s and 8100s in the rear for about a week now. And all I gotta say is, on the road, they're pretty awesome. We're gonna try them out on some of those long speed bumps, you know, in a residential area. And I'm just not gonna break the speed limit, just gonna keep the 25-mile-an-hour speed limit going, see how they do. And so far, I gotta say, I'm pretty impressed with the road handling. They feel like they're gonna be all mushy because they're pretty plush. But as soon as you get into a corner, the truck stays pretty level and pretty neutral. All right, speed bump ahead. Let's just go 25 on it and see what happens. I've been on these many times with the old Elka Toy Tech suspension. Let's see what happens. Come on, baby. I'd say that was pretty smooth for how big it was. I bet you if I go faster, it'd be even better. Okay, 35. It's even smoother. The faster you go, the smoother it gets. Hit it at 40 and see what happens. It's like nothing. All right, let's go 45. Ah, it was like nothing. All right, well, I can't wait to get these things off-road. I hope that was helpful to give you kind of a preliminary review after watching the installation video. The faster you go on these things, the smoother they get, and total control the whole time. We hit that last one going, I think it was either 40 or 45, but every time I went a little faster, it got smoother. And even at normal, like casual speeds. It was a lot more comfortable than it was before. So these will be fun to get off-road. Guys, if you want to see what that's like, I will be taking the truck out in a little while in the summertime here, once the snow melts off these country roads up in the mountains, and we'll do some filming of the vehicle itself. I didn't want to film the vehicle from outside in a residential neighborhood while I'm doing that because, you know, obvious reasons. So please subscribe and stay tuned. I hope that the installation video was helpful. Use a reputable alignment shop so you don't go through what I went through. And stay tuned, subscribe, hit that alert button so you can watch when I take these bad boys off-road and see what they can do.